Somewhere in the true immortal realm, within a certain golden space, a silver-white hall floated in midair. On a raised platform inside the hall, 4 or 5 figures sat in a circle, discussing something among themselves. Every one of them was shrouded in spiritual light of different colors, concealing most of their true appearance. Fellow Taoist Xiong, you have been in our immortal prison for some time now. Have you adapted well? Asked a person wrapped in white radiance to the one beside him. The man being addressed was covered in a layer of golden light. His features were blurred, but one could vaguely make out that he was a young man. Everything is fine, the man in golden light replied with a smile. Our two families have been friends for generations. You only recently broke through to the late golden immortal stage. If you need time to stabilize your cultivation and it is inconvenient for you to carry out missions, just say the word. I can report it to my lord and arrange some time for you, the white-lit man said, thumping his chest. Many thanks, fellow Taoist Xian. My realm is already stable, so there is no need for any special arrangements, the man in golden light answered. Fellow Taoist Xiong truly deserves his name as a genius sword cultivator. Back when you first entered the immortal prison, you were only at the early golden immortal stage, yet you single-handedly slew a reincarnation hall fugitive at the middle golden immortal stage. Now that your cultivation has advanced again, it will not be long before you earn great merit once more, said another figure wrapped in red light. You flatter me, fellow Taoist D. Back then I only succeeded by luck. By the way, this gathering is rare today. Why have I not seen fellow Taoist Gongshu? The golden-lit man asked with a modest smile, clearly unwilling to keep talking about himself as he shifted the subject. Gongshu Tian's clansman died years ago in the northern cold immortal region. He has always wanted to track down the killer, but our lord never allowed it, and the resentment in his heart has never faded. A few days ago, the Heavenly Mirror of Inspection sensed that in the savage borderland between the northern cold immortal region and the black earth immortal region, someone who had achieved mastery of the 4th level of the spirit refinement art seemed to have appeared. Gongshu Tian requested permission to investigate the matter himself. The man in red said slowly. When did this happen? Why have I heard nothing of it? The first 3 levels of the spirit refinement art are one thing, but for someone to have reached the 4th level, it seems the reincarnation hall truly never rests, the white-lit man said in a grave voice. It happened not long ago. All of you were out on missions at the time and I was the only one here. The reincarnation hall? Ha! When have they ever rested? The man in red replied with a dry chuckle. The situation in that savage borderland is complicated. Those barbarian tribes are extremely hostile toward cultivators, and especially toward those of Heavenly Court, whom they regard as mortal enemies. Entering that place to investigate will not be easy, the golden-lit man said slowly, his gaze flickering. Exactly. Gongshu Tian will most likely come back empty-handed, the man in red said, shaking his head with a dismissive air. The golden-lit man's eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was considering. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye more than half a year had gone by. Above a desolate stretch of the savage wilderness, a streak of green light tore across the sky and vanished in an instant, leaving behind only a faint green trail. Inside that green streak of light was a green flying carriage. Hanli sat cross-legged atop it, golden light flickering around him as he cultivated in silence. Before him floated a mass of white cloud. Who knew how much time passed before the golden light on his body gradually faded, revealing his form. He slowly opened his eyes and his gaze shifted a few times. After more than half a year of bitter cultivation, all of his injuries had fully healed, and the power of his divine sense had also completely recovered. He looked toward the white cloud in front of him. Within it, the golden sphere continued to flicker, but there was still no sign of Jin Tong emerging. Hanli frowned slightly, then relaxed again. This time Jin Tong had devoured a late Tai stage gold-devouring immortal. Her slumber would likely last much longer than before. Fortunately, with the map given to him by the Heavenly Fox clan's great encompassing cultivator, the journey had remained relatively safe, so there was no need to be anxious. His gaze shifted to Emoguang and the Pishio at one side. The Pishio lay curled in a corner of the carriage, white light flickering over its body as if dozing. Emoguang, meanwhile, sat cross-legged with black light faintly pulsing over him. In his arms he held that black spirit beast pouch. Thread after thread of black baleful aura continuously poured from the pouch and entered his body. Han Li looked at the black light and suddenly gave a soft exclamation. Although Emo Guang was clearly cultivating with the aid of the baleful aura, the fluctuations coming from him were strangely weak, even weaker than Han Li's own. Now that he had possessed the shell of a high-grade gray immortal, he was, in a sense, hardly different from an ordinary gray immortal. In terms of sheer density of baleful aura, he should far surpass Han Li. Fellow Taoist Han, what is it? Emo Guang seemed to sense Han Li's gaze. He stopped cultivating and opened his eyes. Why are the fluctuations of baleful aura around you so weak? Have you used some secret technique to conceal your presence? Han Li asked, sweeping his eyes across Emo Guang's face. He noticed that Emo Guang's eyes were not gray like those of ordinary gray immortals, but close to the black of a normal human's. Unless one looked carefully, it would probably go unnoticed. Han Li had originally been thinking about how to conceal the heavy baleful aura around Emo Guang, so he could bring him into the Black Mountain Immortal region. Now, however, it seemed that problem might not exist at all. You are mistaken, fellow Taoist Han. I have only been cultivating normally. I have not used any secret art to hide my aura, Emo Guang said, startled. But as soon as he finished speaking, he too noticed how weak the baleful aura around him had become, and surprise appeared on his face. How can this be? Emo Guang muttered, looking just as baffled as Han Li. If you have done nothing, then why do you appear no different from an ordinary person? Han Li asked. Strange. It seems that now that I am in this immortal realm, I no longer feel any discomfort. When I first left that abyss of baleful aura, it was not easy for me at all. It all seems to stem from a peculiar vortex within my dantian, something that was born from the pill you gave me before, Emo Guang said after closing his eyes and sensing his condition for a moment, his voice filled with astonishment. You mean the void origin pill? It can restrain baleful aura. Han Li's eyes flashed as he pressed the question. That's right. This vortex can suppress the aura of baleful energy. Come to think of it, I have taken that pill for quite some time now, but I never noticed this effect before, Emo Guang replied. The void origin pill. Han Li's eyes flickered continuously, thoughts rolling through his mind. It truly is a special pill. Still, I can sense that the vortex formed by its medicinal power is not permanent. It is dissipating little by little. I estimate it can only last a few years, at most a bit more than 10, Emo Guang said after checking within himself once more. Han Li's expression shifted slightly, and he nodded slowly. He had once thought the effect of the void origin pill was to awaken the soul of a gray immortal, but judging from Emo Guang's current condition, its true purpose was likely to allow gray immortals to adapt to the spiritual qi of the true immortal realm and suppress the baleful aura within them, thereby achieving revival. If he intended to travel with Emo Guang into other immortal regions, then this pill would indeed be indispensable. Fortunately, from the storage treasure of that gray immortal corpse, Han Li had obtained a considerable amount of black marrow crystal, the main ingredient for refining void origin pills. He lacked the other ingredients, but none of them were particularly rare. He should be able to purchase them within the reincarnation hall. Han Li flipped his hand and took out the reincarnation hall mask. Opening its trading interface, he posted a bounty for the remaining materials. After that, he took out a piece of black marrow crystal and examined it carefully. Inside the crystal, wisps of black qi swirled. It was baleful aura refined to an extreme purity. The quality of these crystals was far better than the ones Jiao San had given him before. If he used them to refine void origin pills, he would likely need to adjust some of the refinement steps in order to maintain the necessary balance. Han Li was still pondering all of this when suddenly the baleful aura within the immortal apertures in his body jolted violently, surging out of control. His body trembled and streams of thick black qi, dark as spilled ink, shot out from him and rapidly spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, they filled an area of several dozen yards, engulfing everyone on the flying carriage. That black qi exuded a soaring baleful aura. Crimson light flared in Han Li's eyes, and in that instant he seemed to transform into a terrifying god of slaughter. Fellow Taoist Han Yu? Emo Guang cried out in alarm, his face changing drastically. The Pishio and Taoist Xia also noticed Han Li's condition and were equally shocked. The green flying carriage flashed with light and came to an abrupt halt in midair. You all stay here. Do not follow me, Hanli said sharply. He rose to his feet and shot downward. Below was a chain of mountains, green and lush, filled with rich spiritual qi. Between two peaks lay a vast gorge, with a river flowing quietly along the valley floor. Many demon beasts lived in the mountains, but the moment they sensed the terrifying aura radiating from Hanli, they scattered in panic, fleeing in every direction until the place was completely empty. Hanli flew straight into the gorge and without another word, threw a punch. A thunderous boom rang out as the cave was blasted open in the cliff ahead. He darted inside, hastily set up a layer of restrictions around himself, and sat down cross-legged. Golden light erupted from his body and wrapped around him, but the black baleful aura still poured endlessly from within him, and it only grew denser. On the flying carriage above, the Pishio stared in shock. What happened to Master? Judging from the situation, this is the final decline of the 5 heavenly decays that cultivators speak of. The baleful decline has descended, Mo Guang said slowly. Dao Xie glanced at Mo Guang, then flicked out a seal. The flying carriage descended toward the mountain range and stopped at a place within the gorge far from Hanli. Master has only just reached the peak of Golden Immortal. How could the baleful decline arrive so soon? The Pishio said, its face turning ugly. Hanli advanced by using baleful aura to force open his immortal apertures. The baleful aura within him has always been incomparably dense. For him to draw the baleful decline this quickly is only natural, Mo Guang said, faint gray light flickering in his eyes. The baleful decline is extremely dangerous. It is the hardest step before achieving the Tai Jade Immortal stage. I saw countless people around Gongshujiu spend years preparing for it, only to fail in the end and be devoured by baleful aura, driven mad to death. Master has only just reached the peak of Golden Immortal. He probably made no preparation at all. I fear this tribulation, the Pishio said with a sigh. Hearing this, Mo Guang's eyes flashed, and no one knew what he was thinking. Dao Xie gazed silently at the distant cave, his expression as wooden as ever. Inside the cave, Hanli sat cross-legged on the ground, both hands moving through seals as he pushed the mantra axis scripture to its limit. Brilliant golden light gushed from his body, and the mantra treasure wheel emerged once again. Wave after wave of pure time law power spread through the rolling golden radiance like tides, wrapping around his body. More clearly than anyone else, Hanli knew that the signs from earlier meant the 5th and final decline of the 5 heavenly decays had arrived. Thanks to the opportunities he had encountered before, his cultivation at the Golden Immortal realm had advanced at an astonishing pace. The 4th decline that other Golden Immortals might experience after long years of cultivation would likely never descend upon him. But now he stood only one step away from Tai. This 5th decline was unavoidable. The cause, most likely, lay in the fact that he had cultivated the profound baleful dark spirit art given to him by MOU in order to resolve a past crisis. In addition, he had trained the spirit refinement art to the 4th level, which also seemed to be related. Though he had long prepared himself mentally, when this decline suddenly came for real, it still caught him somewhat off guard. But now that it had arrived, he could only face it. Unlike the previous aperture decline he had experienced, the baleful decline erupted with overwhelming violence. He could feel the baleful aura hidden deep within him beginning to stir, surging again and again toward his sea of consciousness. At the same time, part of it resonated with the dozens of immortal apertures in his body that contained baleful energy, causing the baleful aura within them to leak outward. At that moment, Hanli could feel the brutality and bloodlust in his heart rising without end. If his will had not been so strong, he would have gone mad already. At the same time, the sky above the cave darkened without warning. Clusters of black clouds gathered overhead, and within them shadows of red flickered and rolled. A mournful wailing rose through the void, like the cries of restless ghosts. Within several hundred miles, flowers, grasses, and trees withered at a visible pace. The earth and the rocks turned slowly gray-black. What had once been a place of clear waters and green mountains transformed in an instant into a land like the underworld itself. Even Mo Guang and the others in the distance changed expression when they saw it. Before long, black blotches appeared across Hanli's skin, like ink spilled over his flesh. They spread little by little, and strands of black light also emerged within the pure divine sense in his mind. The red in his eyes deepened further, and waves of murderous bloodthirst rose in his heart one after another. Hanli let out a low shout. His hand suddenly moved through another seal, and a dull roll of thunder sounded. Thick golden arcs of lightning appeared across his body. It was the evil expelling divine lightning. At the same time, the radiance of various immortal treasures surfaced around him, weaving and flashing together. The golden lightning crackled and leaped, but that divine lightning, which should have restrained all Een and baleful forces, proved completely ineffective against the baleful aura in Hanli's body. On the contrary, under the relentless corrosion of that dense baleful aura, the originally thick and brilliant lightning rapidly became thin and dim, then vanished altogether. The radiance from those immortal treasures was also quickly dulled by the rushing baleful aura. Only the fragments of law power contained within them managed to resist for a moment. But the assault of the baleful aura was too fierce. Those thin scraps of law power soon collapsed, riddled through and through, leaving only Hanli's power of time law still standing alone. Hanli was not surprised by any of this. His hands continued moving in seals without pause. Behind him, the mantra treasure wheel spun rapidly. The time Tao patterns upon it trembled and flickered, continuously releasing streams of time power that stubbornly resisted the impact of the baleful aura. No matter how violently the baleful aura slammed against it, the law of time remained unyielding, standing firm like an unbreakable wall. Seeing this, Hanli relaxed a little inwardly. Although he truly had not made much preparation for the sudden eruption of the baleful decline, he was not ignorant of it. This decline was terrifying beyond measure. Once it broke out, it was like a celestial river collapsing and a flood bursting through its banks, violent and unstoppable, unlike the gentler nature of the other four declines. Most people could not withstand the initial explosion of baleful aura. Not long after the descent of the decline, they would fall into madness, and in the end both their nascent soul and physical body would burst apart. Fortunately, Hanli possessed one of the three supreme laws, the law of time. Without that as his protective method, he might not have survived even the first stage. But no matter how powerful the law of time was, this baleful aura was not an external force. It originated from within his own body and immortal apertures. No matter how desperately the time law resisted, part of the baleful aura still gradually seeped into his body and mind. The black blotches on Hanli spread rapidly. By now they covered nearly half his body. The red glow in his eyes shone brightly, and the bloodthirst within him only grew stronger. While circulating the spirit refinement art to suppress distracting thoughts, he raised one hand. White light flashed in his palm, and a white carved jade box appeared. A silver talisman was attached to it, radiating streaks of silver light mixed with fluctuations of law power. Hanli quickly began chanting, his hands moving through several rapid seals. The silver light emitted by the talisman suddenly brightened. Then with a hiss it burst into flames and crumbled into ashes. The jade box let out a soft sound and opened on its own. Inside lay a silver pill the size of a longan fruit, giving off a rich medicinal fragrance. It was none other than a Tai pill. Hanli secretly rejoiced that he had risked his life years ago to obtain 3 Tai pills. Otherwise he truly would not know what to do now. He picked up the pill, tilted back his head, and swallowed it. Immediately he wrapped it in immortal spiritual power and began refining it with all his strength. The Tai pill instantly released a surge of silver light and a wave of scorching heat, making Hanli's lower abdomen throb with pain, as if a silver fireball had formed inside him. Hanli took a deep breath, endured the heat, and continued to refine the pill with immortal spiritual power. The silver light flared once more. As it flickered, mighty streams of warm energy spread out and rapidly flowed through his body. The moment the baleful aura inside him touched those warm currents, it melted away like snow before fire. At the same time, however, those warm currents were being continuously consumed. The red glow in Hanli's eyes, which had been steadily growing brighter, finally halted, then slowly began to dim. The black spots on his body stopped spreading and then began to recede. Joy rose in Hanli's heart. The Tai pill had not disappointed him. Without hesitation he continued forming seals, refining the pill to dispel the baleful aura within his body, shutting out all perception of the outside world. Inside the cave, Threads of silver-white radiance began to glow from Han Li's body, reflecting against the golden light. A strange medicinal fragrance drifted from that silver-white glow. Even from far away, Mo Guang and the others could smell it clearly. Master has actually begun refining away the baleful aura, and with such medicinal fragrance, could it be that he already prepared a response to the baleful decline long ago? The Pishio said in astonishment and delight from the air. A trace of surprise crossed Mo Guang's face, but he said nothing. Golden light flashed faintly in Daoist Xie's eyes. Without a word, he guided the flying carriage down toward a nearby place. Seeing that the other two said nothing, the Pishio lowered its head once more, and silence again fell over the carriage. Time passed bit by bit, and in the blink of an eye more than half a year went by. The baleful aura within Han Li's body had been dispersed by more than half. The black blotches on his body had almost entirely vanished, with only a few small patches left. The baleful aura in his mind was much the same, nearly gone. But by now, the Tai pill within him had also been fully refined and disappeared without a trace. The mighty warm current slowly receded. The remaining baleful aura within Han Li had already been forced into a corner, and the instant the medicinal warmth faded, that baleful aura began to churn faintly, showing signs of reviving once more. Alarm flickered through Han Li's heart. He immediately flipped his hand and produced another white jade box. Inside lay a second Tai pill. Without the slightest hesitation, Han Li picked it up and swallowed it. Once the pill entered his body, the interrupted stream of warmth resumed and surged once more toward the remaining baleful aura. With the support of the second Tai pill, it did not take long before the last remnants of baleful aura were completely swept away. The black spots on Han Li's skin vanished completely. His skin turned as white and translucent as jade. Through flesh and skin, one could almost make out the bones within his body. Yet Han Li showed no sign of relief. Though the baleful aura in his body had been cleared away, he knew perfectly well that the baleful decline was not truly over. Among the 107 immortal apertures he had opened, 71 had been forced open through the use of baleful aura. Though the baleful aura in his body had been expelled by the medicinal force of the Tai pill, each of those 71 immortal apertures still contained strands of black baleful energy, and those had not been dispersed by the pill. Han Li's brows drew together at the sight. Just as he had expected, the baleful aura hidden in the immortal apertures had become an obstacle on his road to advancing into Tai. But in the next moment, his knitted brows relaxed again. Though the baleful aura in those apertures had not yet been cleared, more than half the medicinal force of the second Tai pill still remained. In addition, he still possessed a third and even more extraordinary Tai pill. That should be more than enough to drive out the baleful aura in the apertures. Taking a deep breath, Han Li guided the remaining medicinal power of the second Tai pill, and sent it surging into the immortal apertures. Strong currents of warm power poured into them. The black strands of baleful aura immediately trembled and stirred slightly. But unlike the baleful aura that had been cleared away before, these black strands merely shook no matter how the warmth crashed against them. They seemed to have rooted themselves deeply within the immortal apertures and refused to be dislodged. Seeing this, Han Li's heart sank. Still, he continued to drive the medicinal force of the Tai pill forward, wrapping those black strands and grinding against them with all his strength. Time flowed on, and another half-year passed in the blink of an eye. The ease on Han Li's face had long since vanished. Now he looked grim. After half a year of effort, the black strands of baleful aura in the immortal apertures only appeared slightly dimmer than before. That was all. They still remained firmly entrenched. Out of all 71 apertures, not a single one had been fully cleared. Cold light flickered in Han Li's eyes, and his hand clenched tightly into a fist. At that moment, a faint sound rang out from within his body. The second Tai pill had finally been completely refined, dissolving into specks of silver-white light before vanishing. The moment the Tai pill disappeared, the warm current inside him rapidly withdrew from the immortal apertures. And at that very instant a drastic change erupted. As soon as the medicinal force receded, the black strands of baleful aura inside the apertures suddenly flared brilliantly, like fiends suppressed for too long finally breaking free. The strands shone with intense black light and began spinning rapidly on their own. Han Li's immortal spiritual power instantly surged up from within him, and was sucked into those apertures. At the same time, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth outside came rushing in, pouring into the apertures as well. Strange gulping sounds echoed from within them, and along with those sounds, streams of pitch-black baleful aura poured out of the apertures and surged once more into his body. This aura was far darker than before, so black it seemed to swallow all light. It was even stronger than the baleful aura Han Li had carried in the past. Worse still, those black strands within the apertures did not remain there. They began spreading outward, crawling toward the other immortal apertures that had not contained baleful aura. What is happening? Han Li's expression changed sharply. He immediately moved to activate the power of time law to resist. But this time the eruption of baleful aura was far more violent than before. Even the power of time law showed signs of being unable to hold it back. Within Han Li's crimson eyes, threads of gray began to flicker from time to time. His face changed again. One hand formed a seal as he pushed the mantra axis scripture to its limit, trying to fend off the assault of the baleful aura. At the same time, white light flashed in his other hand, and another white jade box appeared. Inside lay a tiny pill. But unlike the previous two, this pill was marked with silver lines that, when connected together, vaguely formed the pattern of a three-legged golden crow. The aura emanating from it was clearly stronger than the other two. Han Li carefully picked up the pill with two pale fingers. Yet just as he brought it to his lips, he suddenly stopped. He stared at the pill in his hand, his gaze uncertain. The speed and ferocity of the baleful decline had far exceeded his expectations. Though this last Tai pill was of even higher quality than the first two, he had no confidence at all that it could disperse the black strands of baleful aura within his immortal apertures. Based on what had happened earlier, failure still seemed the more likely outcome. He even suspected that for an ordinary late golden immortal cultivator, though killing and slaughter in cultivation were unavoidable and would naturally accumulate baleful energy, it would still never reach the absurd extent of his own method of directly using baleful aura to force open immortal apertures. A single ordinary Tai pill would likely be enough for such a person. But his current state was already little different from that of half a gray immortal. Swallowing another Tai pill would most likely be useless, unless he first found a way to solve the problem of the baleful aura embedded in his immortal apertures and restore himself to a normal state. Han Li's eyes suddenly sharpened. He lowered the pill, put it away, and looked into the distance, sending out a thought transmission. In a hidden valley not far from Han Li's cave, Emo Guang and the others sat cross-legged in different places. The emerald flying carriage remained parked in one corner, and above it golden light flickered faintly. Jin Tong still showed no sign of waking. Suddenly, Emo Guang's face shifted slightly, and he rose to his feet. "What are you doing?" The Pixiu Little White suddenly sprang up on all fours and blocked the path in front of the carriage, its eyes full of caution. "Your master has summoned me." Emo Guang did not even glance at it. After speaking lightly, his form blurred and turned into a streak of black light that shot away. A short time later, he appeared before the entrance to Han Li's cave. The restrictions over the cave opened automatically, revealing a passageway. Emo Guang stepped inside. At once, a wave of baleful aura so dense it bordered on the absolute came rushing toward him, filled with bone-piercing Yin wind. Emo Guang did not slow at all. He walked steadily forward, and before long a blurred figure wrapped in black aura and golden light appeared ahead of him. Only the pair of bright, red glowing eyes could be seen clearly. "Fellow Taoist Han," Emo Guang said calmly, his expression unchanged. "Fellow Taoist Emo Guang, I asked you here because I would like to request your assistance," Han Li said while desperately maintaining the power of time law. His speech was slow, as though even speaking had become difficult. "I understand. There is little risk for me in doing this. In fact, it may even benefit me," Emo Guang said with a nod, seeming to understand exactly what Han Li meant. He sat down cross-legged beside him. Han Li said nothing more and immediately acted. With a shake of one sleeve, several hundred black formation flags shot out at once and landed all around the cave. His hands formed seals with blinding speed. The flags blazed with black light, and lines of black formation patterns rapidly emerged, soon forming a black array several yards wide. Han Li chanted under his breath, then suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of essence blood into the formation. The black formation immediately lit up. Then with a hiss, several black beams as thick as arms emerged from the array around Han Li and pierced into his body. The violently churning black baleful aura around Han Li immediately paused, then began flowing through those black beams into the formation. Every line of the array lit with deep black radiance as dense baleful aura raced through the patterns. In only a few breaths, the entire formation was filled with thick baleful energy. At that same moment, the patterns around Emoguang also lit up. Several black beams emerged from them and pierced into his body. The dense baleful aura within the formation seemed to have found an outlet and surged frantically into Emoguang. Emoguang's body trembled slightly, then quickly returned to stillness. Rather than alarm, delight showed on his face. Closing his eyes, he let black light rise from his body as he rapidly absorbed and refined the incoming baleful aura. In that short time, roughly 30% of the baleful aura in Han Li's body had been transferred into Emoguang through the formation. And around Emoguang, baleful energy swirled thickly while he sat with closed eyes, seemingly refining that massive influx. Han Li relaxed slightly. Once more he began chanting, and his right hand formed another seal before closing tight. With a whoosh, golden light flashed in his palm, and a golden jade bottle condensed into being amid motes of light. 6 groups of time Dao patterns were engraved on the bottle, flickering softly and giving off a deeply mysterious aura. It was the purified time bottle. Inside the bottle lay a single drop of translucent golden liquid, faintly glowing. Other than its color, the liquid looked very much like the green fluid condensed by the Palm Heaven bottle. It would not be accurate to say Han Li had made no preparations at all for the baleful decline over the years. During all the years he had spent fleeing through the savage wilderness, whenever he had spare time, he used the purified time bottle's divine ability to absorb the essence of heaven, earth, sun, and moon and condense droplets of time. After so many years of persistence, he had finally managed to condense one single drop. Han Li formed a seal and pointed into the air at the purified time bottle. A ray of golden light shot from his palm and entered the bottle. The time Dao patterns on the bottle immediately brightened. Golden runes surged into the bottle, and that droplet of time slowly rose from the bottom. The nearby golden runes gathered toward the droplet and fused into it at astonishing speed. The golden glow on the droplet's surface immediately intensified, and it began spinning. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth nearby suddenly churned. Within several thousand miles, countless streams of 5-colored spiritual light appeared, then rushed together and merged into the droplet. Han Li's hands moved ceaselessly in seals, sending ray after ray of golden light into the purified time bottle. The golden radiance emitted by the droplet grew brighter and brighter, gradually condensing into solid form and slowly extending at both ends. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. By then, the droplet of time had vanished from within the bottle, transforming into a finger-length golden crystal thread. A powerful force of time law radiated from it. Though it too was a manifestation of the law of time, it was clearly different from the time law of Han Li's mantra treasure wheel. By now, more than half of Han Li's body had turned black. Bloody light flickered in his eyes, though a trace of clarity still remained. Even so, he had reached his most perilous point. Joy flashed in his eyes. He immediately formed another seal and pointed. The golden crystal thread flashed and shot out of the bottle, then disappeared straight into Han Li's chest. A thunderous boom exploded. Vast sheets of golden light erupted from Han Li's body, and rings of golden radiance spread endlessly outward. Within that light rippled wave after wave of time law power. The surrounding space became blurred, as though hidden behind a curtain of mist, and Han Li's figure also grew indistinct. The black formation abruptly stopped operating. Emoguang opened his eyes and stood up. As he looked at Han Li shrouded in golden light, a trace of gray flickered through his gaze. At this moment, the aura around him seemed subtly stronger than before. The golden radiance flashed wildly for a full quarter of an hour before quickly thinning, then disappearing entirely to reveal Han Li once again. The black blotches across his body had vanished completely. The red glow in his eyes was gone as well. His body had returned to its normal appearance. It was as though the earlier scene, when baleful aura had invaded his body and brought him to the brink of collapse, had been nothing more than a dream. Fellow Taoist Han, congratulations. Mo Guang said slowly when he saw Han Li's current state. It is only a temporary measure. Still, many thanks for your help this time, fellow Taoist Mo Guang, Han Li said with a faint smile as he glanced at him. It was a trivial matter. You are too polite, Mo Guang replied, shaking his head. Han Li withdrew his gaze from Mo Guang, took a deep breath, and felt the condition of his body at that moment. Though his expression remained unchanged, he could not help but laugh bitterly inwardly. That golden crystal thread was the thread of time condensed by the purified time bottle. It had the effect of delaying the 5 heavenly decays and had temporarily suppressed and postponed the baleful decline. This was the first time he had used the thread of time. He could not determine how long it would postpone the baleful decline, but judging by instinct, he should be safe for several hundred years. Han Li calmed himself, then swept his sleeve. The black formation flags within the cave and the restriction treasures he had set around himself all shot back into his sleeve. After that, he turned into a streak of azure light. Before long, he arrived at the valley where Taoist Xie and the Pixiu were waiting, with Mo Guang following close behind. Master, you're all right now? Little White, who had been standing guard in front of the carriage, saw Han Li and ran forward with delight. But when it noticed the strange look in Han Li's expression, the words at its lips were swallowed back down. Not far away, Taoist Xie also stood up. He simply cupped his hands toward Han Li without speaking. I'm fine now, Han Li said with a smile, nodding to Taoist Xie and patting Little White on the head. His gaze then shifted to the mass of white cloud and he asked, Jin Tong still has not shown any signs of waking? There has been no movement at all these past 2 years. Master Big Sister. She will be all right, won't she? Little White asked, shaking its head. There is no need to worry. She will be fine, Han Li replied. That's good. Master, where are we going next? Little White asked again, finally letting out a breath of relief. We've stayed here long enough. Brother Xie, let's keep moving, Han Li said after sweeping his gaze across the surroundings. Taoist Xie silently nodded. His figure flickered, and in the next instant he appeared atop the green flying carriage, raising a hand to cast a spell seal. At once, the carriage transformed into a streak of green light and shot into the sky with Han Li and the others aboard. Inside the carriage, Han Li sat cross-legged with his eyes closed, carefully sensing the current condition of his body. Although the decline brought on by baleful qi had been postponed by the power of the law of time contained within the threads of time, not a single trace of the baleful qi inside him had actually faded. Worse still, 3 of the immortal apertures that had once been completely normal had now already been invaded by those black threads of baleful energy. Seeing this, Han Li's heart sank slightly. Then something occurred to him. He opened his eyes and flicked a finger forward. A flash of watery light appeared before him, condensing into a mirror of water that reflected his figure. Within the mirror, streaks of gray light kept flashing through his eyes from time to time, dyeing his pupils with a misty ash-gray hue. It seemed that the frequency with which his eyes turned gray had become greater than before. Han Li waved a hand and dispelled the mirror, a contemplative expression appearing on his face. Judging from the current situation, the northern cold immortal region was likely nothing more than a remote and minor immortal domain in the entire true immortal realm. There were scarcely any cultivators at the Tai stage there, so although he had previously paid attention to matters concerning the 5 decays of heaven and man, he had never managed to obtain much useful information, and his present condition was somewhat different from the ordinary 5th decay besides. It seemed that he would have to wait until entering the Black Mountain immortal region before seeking another solution. But almost immediately, Han Li thought of something else. With a turn of one hand, he took out the Dragon 5 mask from the Hall of Reincarnation that Jiao San had given him years ago, and put it on. Just as he had expected, after his desperate efforts to purchase the ingredients at any cost, quite a few people had already responded regarding the remaining materials needed to refine the Void Origin pill. By the time half an hour had passed, Han Li removed the mask again, and beside him there was already a small pile of materials, all of them ingredients for the Void Origin pill. He gave Taoist Xie, Mo Guang, and the others a few instructions, telling them to carefully watch over Jin Tong and remain alert for any unusual activity in the surroundings. Then he waved a hand to spread out a barrier and took out that silver pill furnace. With a practiced flick of his sleeve, A ball of blazing flame shot out and landed beneath the furnace, revealing the figure of the essence flame spirit. A terrifyingly scorching aura spread from the tiny flame spirit's body. Compared with when they had first left the underworld cold immortal palace, it had clearly grown even stronger. The essence flame spirit babbled a few sounds at Han Li before obediently sitting down. It raised both tiny hands, formed a spell seal and waved them. At once, the white-hot flames on its body surged brightly, then split apart in a flash into 12 separate streams of white fire that whirled out and wrapped themselves evenly around the bottom of the furnace. Very soon, the inside of the pill furnace became searingly hot. After his previous experience refining pills amid that ruinous, terrifying wind, Han Li was now naturally far more adept at refining the Void Origin pill. The only somewhat troublesome point this time was that the quality of the black marrow crystal he was using was exceptionally good, so balancing it against the other ingredients required especially careful control. Still, for someone capable of invoking the power of the law of time, that was hardly an insurmountable problem. Han Li let out a soft breath, calmed his mind, picked up one ingredient, tossed it into the furnace and began refining. In the blink of an eye 7 or 8 years passed. The green flying carriage continued racing at high speed across the endless wilderness below. At times the land beneath was a frozen world of ice and snow, at times a forest of towering ancient trees, at times a desolate desert, and at times an open plain stretching as far as the eye could see. Following the map given to them by the ancestor of the Heavenly Fox clan, they traveled all this way. Although they occasionally had to make rather large detours, they truly encountered no major trouble again. Every now and then, a few foolish ferocious beasts of the wild blocked their path, but before Emoguang, Daoist Xia and Pixiu, they were hardly worth mentioning. Within the barrier, Han Li sat cross-legged, fully focused as he cast one spell formula after another into the silver pill furnace before him. Then came a muffled pop. A flash of silver light rippled across the furnace's surface, and the lid lifted off on its own, revealing what lay within. A single black pill lay quietly inside. Its whole body radiated crystalline black light. It was precisely a Void Origin pill. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face as he waved a hand and put the pill away. Then he released a streak of azure light and stored away the silver pill furnace together with the essence flame spirit. By now, after refining pills on and off all this time, he had already used up all of the materials he had purchased. Excluding the failed attempts, he now possessed around 20 Void Origin pills. He picked up one pill, studied it carefully for a moment, then opened his mouth and swallowed it. He had to experience the effects of this pill personally before he could be certain of its efficacy. The moment the Void Origin pill entered his stomach, it slowly melted away, transforming into a stream of coldine energy that began traveling throughout every part of his body. Wherever that cold force passed, nothing especially remarkable happened. It merely resonated somewhat with the baleful qi inside him, but no further change followed. Han Li knew that this pill required time before its effects would gradually emerge, so he did not grow impatient. He simply closed his eyes and quietly meditated, waiting for the medicinal power to manifest. That wait lasted more than half a year. Then, without warning, the chill force transformed from the pill halted near his lower abdomen and became a strange vortex, spinning ceaselessly while beginning to establish a peculiar connection with the baleful qi inside his body, and within those several dozen immortal apertures. Little by little, the baleful qi in Han Li's body actually began to lie dormant, and even the black-threaded baleful qi within those immortal apertures slowed dramatically. His brows lifted slightly. He raised a hand and flicked a finger. Watery light shimmered in front of him, condensing into another water mirror. Within the mirror, the gray flashes that had previously appeared in his eyes from time to time had now vanished completely, and his pupils had returned to an almost pure black. When Han Li saw this, he quietly relaxed. If he were to enter the Black Mountain Immortal region while his pupils still turned gray from time to time, it would be extremely troublesome. He would likely attract the attention of the Heavenly Court before long. Although he could use spells to conceal it, there was no guarantee the disguise would never slip. Now that the baleful qi had withdrawn and his pupils had more or less returned to normal, then unless someone was deliberately paying close attention or possessed some special method, he should not be discovered. That truly allowed him to breathe much easier. This way, after he and Mo Guang entered the Black Mountain Immortal region, the Void Origin pills in his possession would be enough to sustain them for quite some time. Still, to be safe, he once again posted a request within the Impermanence Alliance to purchase more ingredients for the Void Origin pill. But just after finishing all this, a muffled boom rang out. Han Li waved a hand to remove the surrounding restrictions and rose to his feet. When he saw the source of the disturbance clearly, delight appeared on his face. At the rear of the flying carriage, the white cloud mass was churning violently. The golden sphere hidden within it was now blazing brilliantly, tearing the surrounding white cloud apart. A vast aura spread out from the golden sphere, rolling in every direction. Little White, the Pixiu who had been sleeping soundly, was startled awake and hurried over. Mo Guang sat cross-legged on the other side of the carriage. He merely opened his eyes to glance once in this direction before closing them again. "Boss is waking up?" Little White muttered as he looked at the golden sphere. "Brother Xie, find a place to stop," Han Li said after a brief moment of thought. Dao Xie raised a hand and cast a spell. The flying carriage immediately dove toward a place below, and before long it came to rest in a mist-shrouded mountain valley. By this time the golden sphere's radiance had grown brighter and brighter, like a golden sun, turning the surrounding void into a world of pure gold. Han Li waved a hand and retrieved the large white banner. At that very moment, cracks suddenly appeared across the surface of the golden sphere and spread rapidly. Then with a sharp tearing sound, a large hole split open in it. A slender figure slowly stepped out from within. It was a girl who looked to be around her teens, with golden hair falling over her shoulders, curved brows, bright almond-shaped eyes, and a graceful, elegant figure. As she emerged, the golden sphere exploded with a bang, shattering into countless specks of golden dust that drifted through the air like a rain of glittering powder. Bathed in that shower of gold, the golden-haired girl slowly walked toward Han Li and the others. Her skin was luminous and smooth, and though she passed through the drifting golden dust, not a single particle clung to her. There was not the slightest trace of mortal earthliness about her. "You are Jin Tong?" Han Li asked, a faint crease appearing between his brows as he looked at her. Aside from her golden hair and the fact that her features still faintly resembled Jin Tong's former appearance, both her figure and face had changed greatly, and above all, her temperament had undergone a complete transformation. The feeling she gave off was entirely different from before, carrying a coldness that warned others not to approach. Little White stared at the golden-haired girl with his eyes wide open, momentarily stunned. To survive that danger and successfully advance to the Tai stage. "Even now, thinking back on it still feels like a dream," Jin Tong said as she nodded to Han Li and lazily stretched. Her pink lips parted slightly as she spoke. Even her voice had changed. It was as crisp and musical as pearls falling onto a jade tray, pleasant to hear, and yet it seemed utterly devoid of emotion. Hearing this, Han Li's brows still did not relax. Blue light flickered in his eyes as he carefully examined Jin Tong from head to toe, hesitation still lingering in his gaze. "Uncle, why are you looking at me like that? If I'm not Jin Tong, then am I supposed to be that gold-devouring immortal that was chasing us? It's just that after swallowing that thing, it feels like there's a lot more in my memory now." A trace of mischievous amusement flashed through Jin Tong's eyes, but it vanished in an instant, replaced once more by that icy calm. "Did you remember something?" Han Li asked, his expression finally easing. Once he heard that familiar uncle, and confirmed it again through their spiritual connection, he was finally certain that the person before him truly was Jin Tong. "Uncle, ever since the mortal world, thank you for looking after me. Without you, Jin Tong could never have come this far," Jin Tong said after a moment of silence. Rarely she bowed properly to Han Li. "Why are you suddenly saying things like this?" Han Li asked, slightly startled. "I want to go out on my own and search for the other gold-devouring immortals," Jin Tong said. "You already have clues about the others?" Han Li asked, frowning slightly. "No, but I can vaguely sense some things," Jin Tong replied, shaking her head. "Though your strength has grown tremendously now, I still can't feel at ease with you wandering around aimlessly on your own," Han Li said slowly. "Yeah, boss. The immortal realm is so dangerous. Why not just stay with Master? The two of you together wouldn't even fear opponents at the late Tai stage. You'd have food, drink, and safety. Why leave?" Little White hurriedly chimed in. Finding my own kind is my mission. Uncle, you also have things you must do, Jean Tong said without the slightest wavering, shaking her head again. Seeing this, Han Li's gaze shifted slightly, but he said nothing. Little White still wanted to say something more, but when he saw the firm resolve on Jean Tong's face, he ultimately fell silent. Have you really thought it through? Han Li asked after a long pause. I hope Uncle will allow it, Jean Tong said with a nod. Very well. Since you insist so strongly, then I'll let you go. After all, no banquet in this world lasts forever, Han Li said with a sigh. Jean Tong bowed deeply to Han Li, then turned to leave. Wait. Take these with you. Han Li stopped her and flipped a hand, producing a jade-green bracelet engraved with phoenix patterns, which he tossed toward her. Jean Tong instinctively reached out and caught it. There is a map of this wilderness inside, along with some spirit treasures and immortal essence stones. It should be enough for you to use for quite a while. Besides that, there are also several Impermanence Alliance masks. If you ever need help, send me a message at any time, Han Li said calmly. As for Jean Tong, even he could not quite define how he felt. She seemed like a close comrade who had fought beside him through life and death, and yet also like a daughter he had watched over and raised from childhood. Jean Tong looked at the phoenix bracelet in her hand. A complex emotion flashed through her eyes. She did not refuse it, but silently put it on her left wrist. Boss, I'll go with you, the Pichio suddenly cried from the side, leaping over to Jean Tong. Little White. Jean Tong looked startled. Boss, you said before that you were going to take me as your little brother. You can't go back on your word now. Little White rubbed his head affectionately against Jean Tong as he spoke. It's good for Little White to go with you. If you encounter another powerful gold-devouring immortal, he could still hide inside its body if necessary, Han Li said, his brows twitching slightly. All right then. I'll take you with me. But you'd better improve your strength quickly. If you dare become a burden, I'll kick you aside immediately, Jean Tong said after a moment's thought, reaching out to pat Little White's head. Little White was instantly overjoyed and nodded again and again. Oh right. I once read something about the gold-devouring immortals in an old record. It seemed that one had once appeared in the Golden Origin Immortal region, though its strength was unknown. That was likely a very long time ago, and the creature may no longer be there now, but if you can't find any better clues, you can try your luck there first, Han Li said after brief thought. Golden Origin Immortal region. I understand. Thank you, Uncle. You should also take care, Jean Tong said with a faint nod. After giving Han Li one long deep look, she moved and transformed into a streak of golden light, wrapping Little White within it as she flew off in a certain direction, disappearing beyond the horizon in an instant. Han Li watched her vanish. Only after quite some time did he withdraw his gaze. We should go too, he said, his expression having already returned to calm. Before long, a green streak of light rose from the ground and sped away into the distance. A short while later, space trembled near the distant sky, and two faint figures suddenly appeared there, one tall and one short. It was none other than Jean Tong and Little White, who had supposedly already departed. Uncle, it's not that Jean Tong is unwilling to follow you. It's just that what I must face next is beyond anything you can imagine. Surviving this time was already no easy thing. Jean Tong doesn't want to become your burden again, Jean Tong murmured as she gazed at the last fading trace of green light on the horizon. Boss, why make things so hard on yourself? I haven't been with Master for very long, but the instincts of a true spirit of the wilderness tell me that Master is blessed by fortune. He would never be afraid of being burdened by you, Little White said softly. You mean I'm a burden? Jean Tong suddenly turned around and glared at Little White in a less than friendly tone. No, that's not what I meant. I meant, boss, you are wise and mighty, your cultivation shakes the heavens, and of course you can roam the world alone without fear. Little White hurriedly changed his words. Although I've recovered part of my memory now, there are still many things I don't fully understand. But I vaguely know that I am probably not something as simple as an ordinary spirit insect. Little White, since you call me boss, I naturally won't treat you poorly. As long as you help me recover what originally belonged to me, then in the future whatever you want to eat, you can eat, Jean Tong said with a sudden sigh, her expression turning serious. Boss, don't worry. From now on I'll follow your lead in everything. Whatever you tell me to eat, that's what I'll eat. Little White declared, straightening all four legs in solemn resolve. You've spent too much time around that bootlicker Emoguang. You learned nothing useful, but your flattering skills have already surpassed his. Jintong curled her lip, then turned toward the distance. Let's go. According to this map, the Golden Origin Immortal region is not close. Hey boss, wait for me. Speaking of that fellow Emoguang, Little White hurried after her, running on all fours. Northern Black Mountain Immortal region. There was a secluded valley deep within a mountain range blanketed with endless emerald bamboo. A clear stream wound gently through the center of it, while mist rose from the bamboo groves on both sides, and now and then the crisp, melodious songs of birds drifted through the air. Deep in the forest, one could occasionally see snow-white wild deer wandering about, each with plum blossom patterns along both sides of its back. In the central stretch of the stream, where the terrain of the valley was at its steepest, the river twisted in many bends between craggy rocky banks. At one great bend the current slowed, forming a deep green pool. To the left of the pool stood a massive stone platform. Upon it sat a middle-aged man in green gauze robes, cross-legged, plucking at a dark violet ancient zither. His features were regular and handsome, his face refined and elegant. Long black hair flowed down his back, lending him an otherworldly air. His slender, pale fingers moved lightly across the strings, drawing out beautiful sounds like flowing spring water, clear and resonant. Not far away, a black-robed old man and a white-haired elder sat facing one another with a square chessboard between them, trading moves across the board as though directing armies across a realm. The black-robed elder wore his garments in perfect order, not a single crease in sight. His dark hair was tied up neatly and without the slightest disorder. His whole bearing was clean, sharp, and precise, like a sword just drawn from its sheath. The white-haired elder opposite him looked far more slovenly. He wore a moon-white robe embroidered here and there with flame patterns. His shoulders drooped lazily, one hand propping up his head. His hair was loose and messy, his eyes drowsy, and his whole demeanor languid and unhurried. The black-robed elder played the white pieces. His style was fierce and decisive. Every stone he placed struck the board with force, producing crisp, snapping sounds. The white-haired elder, by contrast, deliberated slowly and played in an unhurried manner, each move landing softly without a sound. The black-robed elder seemed long accustomed to this and never once urged him on. After each move he simply closed his eyes and contemplated the roots of the 9th, even the 10th move to come. Old Firehead, the way you dawdle like this is unbearable. If I didn't know your background, I'd think you were some 10,000-year-old turtle spirit from a river somewhere who cultivated into human form. A brown-robed old man watching from the side said with a laugh, after taking a large swig of wine. Can't spit ivory from a dog's mouth. Fellow Taoist Duan hasn't said a word, so why are you butting in, you old drunk? Go on, go drink your horse piss somewhere else. The white-haired elder snapped back, casting him a sidelong glance. Yet there was no real anger on his face. When you played that game against Lu Guanzi from Sunward Valley last time, how long did it take? 30 years of dragging your feet, wasn't it? In the end, a true 9th rank master couldn't stand it anymore and threw in the stones in defeat. Before he could finish, the white-haired elder raised his voice and cut him off. Lu Guanzi only got restless because he heard some exceptionally beautiful true immortal woman cultivator had arrived at Color Phoenix Valley. Otherwise, that game could have gone on for another 20 years at least. Beautiful, my foot. I went and saw her myself. That chest, those hips, that face, at best she was above average. Only someone like Lu Guanzi would admire that. She wasn't to my taste at all, the brown-robed elder said, raising his brows and shaking his head. The white-haired elder rubbed his chin and stared at the chessboard. It seemed the game was slowly turning against him, and he began seriously considering his next moves, no longer paying attention to the brown-robed elder. Ugh! Talking to you lot is no fun at all. And who knows what fellow Taoist Li is busy with. He still hasn't shown up, the brown-robed elder muttered after belching, turning his head toward the mouth of the valley. The green-robed man playing the zither pressed both hands down across the strings, and the music stopped at once. I heard that fellow Taoist Li has recently been refining a furnace of 5 stone pills. I sent him a message the day before yesterday, and he never replied. He must still be in seclusion, he said, looking over at the brown-robed elder. The moment he finished speaking, a tall young man in a green robe with a somewhat pale complexion emerged from the depths of the bamboo grove and walked slowly along the stream toward them. He had an ordinary face and an unremarkable bearing, the sort of person who would disappear entirely if tossed into a crowd. It was none other than Han Li. His appearance altered beneath the Hall of Reincarnation mask. Since parting with Jean Tong and Little White in the wilderness all those years ago, more than 400 years had already passed. Han Li himself had now lived in the floating cloud mountain range for nearly 200 years. Well, fellow Taoist Li, there you are at last. Come, drink a couple of cups with me, the brown-robed elder shouted as soon as he saw Han Li, jumping up from the ground. Only the green-robed man with the zither remained seated cross-legged, though he too smiled and looked over. Han Li smiled. His steps suddenly blurred, leaving a string of afterimages along the stream, yet his true body had already landed atop the great stone platform. Fellow Taoist Rohua, fellow Taoist Jingyang, fellow Taoist Duan, fellow Taoist Ziki. I have been occupied with pill refinement lately, and missed the invitation from all of you. Please forgive me, Han Li said with a smile, bowing to each of the four in turn. No matter. You are a pill master after all. Refining pills is proper business. Unlike us old fellows who idle our days away and only have time to fiddle with these worldly amusements, the white-haired elder known as Immortal Venerable Rohua said with a laugh, waving his hand dismissively. He had originally been the supreme elder of a mid-sized sect native to the Black Mountain Immortal region. But because he was lazy by nature and truly unwilling to handle sect affairs, he had dumped all responsibilities onto a junior fellow disciple of the same generation, and hidden himself away in these floating cloud mountains to enjoy an easy life. Though his appearance was sloppy and disheveled, he was in fact the strongest cultivator among the four seated on the stone, having already reached the late golden immortal stage. The black-robed elder playing chess against him was named Duan Yuzai, also a native of the Black Mountain Immortal region. But unlike Rohua, he came from no sect. He was a rogue cultivator of the wilds who had clawed and fought his way up to the early golden immortal stage. Having grown weary of the bloodshed and scheming of earlier years, he too had hidden himself here. As for the zither player and the brown-robed elder, one was named Yuziki and the other was known as Master Jingyang. Neither was originally from the Black Mountain Immortal region. Both had traveled here from other immortal domains and ultimately chosen to remain. One of them was at the late True Immortal stage, the other at the late Golden Immortal stage. Though their cultivation levels differed greatly, they were the closest pair among the four. In truth, besides these four and Han Li, many cultivators lived scattered among the 72 valleys and 36 ravines of the entire floating cloud mountain range. Most of them were wandering cultivators or traveling immortals who knew that, in this life, their great path had no hope of advancing any further. So they simply entrusted themselves to mountains and rivers, devoting their hearts to zither, chess, brewing wine, composing poetry, and other worldly pursuits, and in doing so lived lightly and at ease. Over time, the floating cloud mountain range came to be known by another name, Idle Cloud Mountain. The valley where Han Li and these four lived had originally been called Cloud Deer Valley, but they themselves had renamed it Wild Crane Valley. Within this Idle Cloud Mountain there had always been a peculiar rule. Do not ask about the past, do not become entangled in disputes, and do not allow outside interference. In other words, no one living here was to pry into another's history, no conflicts were to be stirred up within the mountains, and no external force was permitted to disrupt the order here. As for how this rule came into being, Han Li had once heard an imprecise explanation from Immortal Venerable Rohua. It was said that long ago, a rogue cultivator who practiced in the floating cloud mountains had established this rule. At first no one paid any mind to it, but that person's killing intent and killing power were both terrifyingly great. Whether the one who broke the rule was an individual, a family, or an entire sect, all were exterminated by that person alone. After that, no one dared violate it again. Later, there were rumors that this same person had once held an important post in the heavenly court. After that person departed, those rules gradually became the iron law of Idle Cloud Mountain, to the point that even the immortal palace governing this place simply turned a blind eye to it. In this idle cloud mountain, worldly amusements are the real proper business. Who could be like me? Even after hiding here, I still can't get any peace and quiet. I have to go into seclusion to refine pills all the time. It truly shames the name of an idle crane among drifting clouds, Han Li said with a bitter smile. And fortunately for us that you are a pill master. Otherwise, without that golden soul pill you produced in time, when I broke through to golden immortal back then, my soul would have collapsed and my spirit scattered to nothing, Duan Yuzai said in a solemn tone. Fellow Taoist Duan, there is no need to become so serious every time this is mentioned. To me that was only a small effort. Later, thanks to your introduction, I was able to open a cave dwelling in this wild crane valley. You have already repaid the favor, Han Li said with a smile. How could a life-saving ever be repaid so easily? Duan Yuzai said, a trace of shame flickering in his eyes. Han Li had long been familiar with this earnest, worldly, chivalrous temperament of his, one that valued gratitude and enmity with utmost seriousness, so he no longer bothered to persuade him otherwise. By the way, where is Fairy Emo? Why did she break her promise today as well? Han Li asked, looking around once more. You know Emo Wushua well enough. She's gone to sit in dead meditation on Clearwind Cliff again, Yuziki replied. What dead meditation? She's just sitting there like a fool. One sitting and she can stay that way for 10 years or 100. Even among all the eccentrics gathered in Idle Cloud Mountain, she's a rare one, Master Jingyang said scornfully. Alas! Though the great path may already be hopeless in this life, that does not mean it should be wasted like this. If cultivation brings no joy, why not devote oneself to the mortal world? Romance, moonlight, flowers, music, chess, poetry, wine. There is always some pleasure to be found, Yuziki said with some regret. Romance is not a pleasure one can enjoy alone. You would have to help with that, Ziki, Han Li said with a teasing smile, well aware that Yuziki had long harbored feelings for Emo Wushua. Yuziki still smiled at the joke, but inwardly he could only sigh. Emo Wushua was an early golden immortal cultivator, while he himself was only at the late true immortal stage. With his aptitude, it was likely he would never cross the threshold into golden immortal in this lifetime, and the calamity of the 5 decays of heaven and man still hung over him. How could he dare hope to become Tao companions with her? Oh right. I heard you've been refining a batch of 5 stone pills recently, fellow Taoist Li. Could you sell me one? Master Jingyang suddenly put away his wineskin and leaned in with a grin. Sell? That sounds far too distant between us, fellow Taoist Jingyang, Han Li said, waving a hand. The brown-robed elder immediately beamed with delight. But before he could finish smiling, Han Li's next sentence made the corners of his mouth twitch sharply. With the relationship between the two of us, why would there be any need to buy one? You can just trade me a jug of green ferment wine. That green ferment wine was an exceptionally special immortal brew that Master Jingyang had learned to make from an ancient text, blending together the essence of over 100 immortal herbs and spirit plants. It was produced only in tiny quantities, and its value was no less than that of a 5-stone pill. Seeing the pained expression on Master Jingyang's face, everyone else secretly found it amusing. In the end, wine still has flavor. Pills and the like. What taste do they even have? Master Jingyang muttered at last. Unable to part with his treasured wine, he shook his head. Han Li's smile deepened. Suddenly, he flicked his sleeve, and 4 streaks of light shot out at once toward the 4 people on the stone. They hurriedly reached out and caught them, only to find palm-sized white jade bottles in their hands. This is? Ruhua asked in surprise. 5 stone pills. 1 for each of you. There are no extras beyond that, Han Li said with a nod. Fellow Taoist Li, Master Jingyang said blankly. The others were just as astonished. After all, the 5-stone pill was a golden immortal grade pill, one that had no small effect on consolidating one's cultivation and improving one's strength. It was absolutely not the sort of thing one casually handed out. Well then, don't be in such a hurry to be surprised. The reason I'm giving these pills to all of you is because I truly do have something to ask, Han Li said with a sigh. Hearing this, none of them put away the pills immediately. Instead, their expressions turned serious as they waited to hear what Han Li needed. I'm sure all of you have noticed already that the baleful qi in my body is abnormally dense, haven't you? To tell the truth, I am indeed currently experiencing the 5 decays of heaven and man and am trapped by baleful qi, Han Li said slowly, looking at them one by one. There was indeed no shock on their faces. Instead, they looked as if a long-standing puzzle had finally received a reasonable answer. They all knew that the 5 decays of heaven and man was a barrier that could not be avoided and perhaps could not be crossed. So when it came to Han Li's circumstances, they felt a kind of sympathy born from shared understanding. Some days ago, I obtained a pill formula capable of refining a medicine that can temporarily resist the backlash of baleful qi. The problem is that I have been unable to find a spirit material known as black qi crystal, so I wanted to ask you all to help me look for it, Han Li continued. The formula he spoke of was called the Baleful Purging Pill, a secret recipe he had obtained through the Impermanence Alliance. Its true effect was not merely to temporarily suppress the backlash of baleful qi, but rather to cleanse the baleful qi entirely and thereby help a golden immortal cultivator survive the baleful decay. However, that claim was only hearsay. Because the pill was so extremely rare, its effects had never been widely verified. To refine this pill, 2 primary ingredients were crucial. One of them was none other than the dozen or so strange spirit herbs Han Li had collected from the bottom of the abyssal valley of baleful qi all those years ago. Only after inquiring within the Impermanence Alliance had he learned that this thing was called bitter luo grass, a spiritual treasure that was born only in places where baleful qi gathered thickly and required at least tens of thousands of years to come into being. Its value was astonishingly high, and this was one of the key reasons why the baleful purging pill was so rare. The other primary ingredient was the black qi crystal. Of the people present, 3 of them, including Master Jingyang, looked utterly blank and said they had never heard of it. Only immortal Venerable Rohua fell into thought for a moment before speaking. Fellow Taoist Li, are you perhaps referring to the legendary flower heart stone? Exactly. Could it be that fellow Taoist Rohua has seen it before? Han Li asked at once, his brows lifting. A supreme spirit material like that? I have had no such fortune. I only heard that several hundred years ago it once appeared in Jade Kuan Tower in Jukuan City, Rohua said, shaking his head. What exactly is this black qi crystal that the 2 of you make it sound so mysterious and precious? Master Jingyang asked curiously. Black qi crystal is a top-grade spirit stone, and serves as a primary ingredient in many Tai-level pills. It begins as a grass-type spiritual plant, usually growing alone. After tens of thousands of years it will finally bloom. Once the flower opens, a tiny crystal forms at the center of the blossom. That is the black qi crystal, Rohua explained. Unless disturbed by outside force, the flower will never wither, and the crystal will continue growing. The older it becomes, the richer the spirit power and medicinal potency it contains. But if there is even the slightest external disturbance, the crystal will fall away, the petals will wither, the whole plant will die, and even the roots will turn to ash. On top of that, it usually grows in remote and perilous places where no one goes, so the amount available on the market is vanishingly small. It is truly the sort of thing that can be sought but not bought, Han Li added. So rare. In that case, it looks like your 5 stone pills might all go to waste, fellow Taoist Li, Master Jingyang said with a click of his tongue, shaking his head. Rest assured, fellow Taoist Li. Though I am a solitary man, I still have a few old acquaintances, some of whom deal in spirit herbs and rare materials. I will definitely entrust them to help search for it, Duan Yuzai said solemnly. Many thanks. Han Li cupped his hands in gratitude. This kind of matter is probably beyond me. But old Rohua here can enter the inner city of Jukuan City freely, so he may be able to ask around for you. Who knows, perhaps one day Jade Kuan Tower will bring the thing out again, Master Jingyang said, spreading his hands. Do not worry, fellow Taoist Li. Once this game is over I will make a trip back to Jukuan City, Rohua said. The moment his words fell, 2 crisp sounds rang out on the chessboard as 2 white stones landed in place. I concede, Duan Yuzai said cleanly and without hesitation. Forget it. I'll head to Jukuan City right away, Rohua said, instantly speechless. In the end he could only shake his head, bid the others farewell, and transform into a streak of light that shot southward. Tens of thousands of miles south of the floating cloud mountain range stood Jukuan City, the largest and most prosperous city in the northern part of the Black Mountain Immortal Domain. Unlike the many cities of the northern cold immortal domain, where mortals made up the majority of the population, Jukuin City housed several hundred immortal factions. There were cultivation clans, branch halls established by sects, and the overwhelming majority of its residents were cultivators. Perhaps because of this, the Immortal Palace kept the place under extremely strict control. The entire city was rigidly divided into an inner city and an outer city. All cultivators were free to enter and leave the outer city, but the inner city was bound by many restrictions. Anyone whose cultivation had not reached the true immortal realm, and who was not a registered cultivator of a local sect within the Black Mountain immortal domain, was forbidden from entering the inner city. Even local rogue cultivators from the mountains and wilderness were no exception. Only those who had reached the Tai Jade immortal realm could enter the inner city freely without being restricted by their place of origin. It was said that within Jukuin City's inner city, there was also a resident inspector envoy sent from the Heavenly Court, a figure whose cultivation was unfathomable, and who served as the pillar that held the entire Black Mountain immortal domain steady. In truth, when Hanli first arrived in the Black Mountain immortal domain more than 100 years ago, he had not settled down in Wild Crane Valley right away. He had gone directly to Jukuin City first. Not long after entering the city, he saw a ritual platform in a plaza just inside the gates, one known as the Immortal Execution List. A list over 1,000 feet long hung upon the platform, painted with all kinds of figures. Some were human, some demon, and some belonged to various other races. Beneath each image were written their crimes and the reward for their capture, dead or alive. As Hanli looked through the list one by one, he was startled to find quite a few familiar faces among them, including Bailey Yan, Daoist Tuyen, and Zhao San. Zhao San ranked even higher than Bailey Yan, though the name used for her was Gan Zhouzhen. The portrait on the list did not reveal her true face either, showing only a crimson beast mask in its place. Then, when Hanli finally scanned all the way down to the very bottom of the list, another familiar figure entered his sight. It was none other than himself. The image showed him dressed in a blue robe, holding a sword in one hand and thrusting it forward. Though the features differed slightly from his true appearance, the likeness still captured his essence with striking accuracy. Beneath the image was a short line of text. Li Feiyu practices forbidden arts. Participated in the murder of an immortal official of high rank in the Heavenly Court. Dead or alive. Reward: 5,000 immortal origin stones. When he had read it back then, his brows had immediately knitted together. It was not because he had been wanted but because he felt indignant. His own reward was only 5,000 immortal origin stones, while Zhao San's had reached a full 100,000. He could overlook the matter of killing Tao Yu, but after killing Gong Shujiu in the Mingshan Cold Immortal Palace, his bounty should not have been this low. After all, that had been a Tai-level inspector envoy. With that thought, Hanli had looked back up at Gan Zhouzhen's wanted notice and found that the list of her crimes was far more extensive. In addition to practicing forbidden arts and murdering immortal officials, she had also been accused of colluding with Grey Immortals and more besides. After a little thought, he understood. The Immortal Palace had most likely placed the main blame for Gong Shujiu's death on Gan Zhouzhen and Mou. With the level of cultivation he had back then, he could at most be counted as an accomplice. Originally, Hanli had intended to leave the city at once, yet after observing the place for a while, he discovered that cultivators in Jukuin City were as numerous as the hairs on an ox. The people coming and going were all occupied with their own affairs, and hardly anyone ever stopped to look at the immortal execution list. Through some discreet probing and observation, he came to realize that most of the people on the list, Gan Zhouzhen included, were already long-standing fugitives wanted by the Black Mountain Immortal Palace and even the Heavenly Court itself. To most of the people in Jukuin City, their names were already familiar. Unless someone had some clue to follow or some special intention, there was naturally no reason to waste time staring at the list. The deeper reason was simple. Most of the people who made it onto that list were not easy to provoke. So Hanli conceived the idea of hiding in plain sight. He remained in Jukuin City for a time, searching for a way to deal with the baleful aura within his body. When no solution could be found, and since both his own situation and Mo Guang's were rather unusual and made moving about the city inconvenient, he ended up meeting Duan Yuzai by a twist of fate. After that, He opened a cave dwelling in the more suitable Wild Crane Valley and settled there. As they watched Hot Flame Immortal Venerable's figure disappear into the distance, the few people who remained behind all showed faint smiles. Fellow Taoist Duan, this was never something that could be accomplished in a single stroke. There was really no need for you to dampen fellow Taoist Hot Flame's mood like that, Hanli said with a smile. It does not matter. The Tao of board games is itself an act of cultivating the heart. My mind was no longer on it, and fellow Taoist Hot Flame surely noticed as well. Besides, I have already memorized the position of the game. After reviewing it another day, I can face him again, Duan Yuzai said, waving a hand dismissively. As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve. A streak of black light flashed past, and the entire board and stone containers vanished. Fellow Taoist Li, last time you said you were going to brew a few jars of fire saliva wine. I wonder. Jingyang Shangren leaned over again at that moment and asked with a grin. The taste of fire saliva wine cannot compare to your green ferment wine, and it is nowhere near as difficult to brew. Naturally, it is already done, Hanli replied with a hearty laugh. The green ferment wine is not actually finished brewing yet. It still lacks several thousand years of aging. If I were to bring it out now, it would truly be a waste of a heavenly treasure, Jingyang Shangren said somewhat sheepishly. Hanli laughed again. I knew fellow Taoist Jingyang was not such a stingy man. With that he waved a hand, and a flash of light deposited an earthen yellow wine jar by Jingyang Shangren's feet. Jingyang Shangren's face brightened at once. He quickly lifted the jar, slapped away the clay seal, and gave it a light sniff. Instantly, his whole face turned intoxicated with delight. Excellent wine. After saying that, a trace of puzzlement crossed his face. But this wine looks as though it has been cellared for several hundred years at least. It does not seem like something brewed only recently. When one entertains friends, naturally one brings out the best. This is something I managed to save up with great difficulty. Today, the lot of you are truly fortunate, Hanli said with a smile. Duan Yuzai and Yuziki were not particularly fond of drink, but since it was rare for several like-minded people to gather together, they still drank with great enjoyment. By dusk, Hanli finally returned to his cave dwelling after enjoying himself to the fullest. Deep within the bamboo forest, a cave dwelling had been carved into a mountain wall, some distance away from the dwellings of the others. At that moment, the stone doors of the cave were tightly shut. Watery blue light flowed across them, and two golden armored guards stood on either side. They were his Tao soldiers. These two Tao soldiers looked very different from before. Their bodies had grown noticeably larger, and many strange spiral patterns had appeared across their armor. The aura they gave off had nearly doubled. Not only that, faint spiritual light now flickered in their eyes, giving them a touch of intelligence and liveliness. When they saw Hanli return, both bowed in salute. Hanli paid them no attention. He opened the stone door and walked inside. Behind him, blue light flashed several times across the doorway before it closed again on its own. The cave dwelling was not large. At its center was a main hall, with several side chambers nearby. Hanli glanced toward the two tightly shut chambers on the left. Inside them, Mo Guang and Xie Daoren were in secluded cultivation. Although Mo Guang could use void origin pills to conceal the baleful aura around him, he was ultimately possessing the body of a true gray immortal. That could not be said to be absolutely foolproof. During the period they had spent in the city, he had nearly been exposed several times. So after arriving in Wild Crane Valley, he had remained inside the cave dwelling all these years without taking a single step outside. As for Xie Daoren, for some unknown reason, he too had suddenly entered seclusion after coming to the Black Mountain Immortal Domain and rarely emerged. Hanli withdrew his gaze and walked deeper inside, arriving at the chamber where he usually cultivated. He sat down cross-legged and stared into the empty space before him in silence. Ever since parting from Jin Tong, he had followed the map given to him by the man in white robes. Although he had carefully avoided most dangerous regions along the way, the wilderness was far vaster than he had imagined, and there were simply too many variables. Even so, he had still encountered several deadly dangers that had nearly cost him his life. Had his strength not already approached the Tai realm, had he not possessed the protection of the time law, and had he not also had Mo Guang, a gray immortal capable of briefly displaying Tai-level power. To assist him, the outcome would likely have been impossible to predict. On one occasion, he had been hunted for 3 full years by a pack of Tai Realm Thunder Beasts. Their speed of escape far exceeded even his green flying carriage at full power, and they could also perform a teleportation art similar to a lightning array. He had no idea why they were so relentlessly determined to pursue him. Han Li had used every method at his disposal and still failed to shake them off. In the end, he had no choice but to fight them head-on. Working together, he and Mo Guang managed to kill the 2 leading Thunder Beasts, and only then did the rest retreat in fear. Even so, Han Li had suffered severe depletion and spent several years recovering his vitality afterward. On another occasion, he had stumbled into a volcanic death zone and been trapped inside a naturally formed flame secret realm. It took more than 10 years before he finally escaped alive, relying on the ability of the Essence Flame Firebird to devour all flames. Though the journey had been full of danger, his gains had been considerable as well. Leaving aside the many precious wilderness materials he had collected along the road, he had also infiltrated several foreign races and secretly learned quite a few secret arts and cultivation methods from them. The Dao soldiers standing at the entrance had been remade using one such secret art he learned from a foreign race in the wilderness. Under ordinary circumstances, so many gains would have delighted Han Li greatly. But at this moment, all his thoughts were fixed on the baleful decay that could descend again at any unknown time, and he had little mind left for anything else. After sitting quietly for a while, his hands suddenly began to form seals. With a humming sound, bright golden rings of light spread out before him and gathered toward one spot. The golden light flashed, condensing into a golden jade bottle. It was the pure time bottle. The bottle looked much larger than before, almost as if it had become solid. Hundreds of clusters of time law patterns flickered across its surface, while arcs of golden light circled around it, radiating a powerful aura of the time law. During these years, Han Li had tried using the experience he had gained from the mantra treasure wheel, and had also attempted to increase the number of time law patterns on the pure time bottle by means of time crystal grains condensed from the heaven palm bottle. Just as he had expected, it had indeed worked. Han Li toyed with the pure time bottle for a moment, then set it aside and formed another series of seals. Strands of crystalline golden light rose from his body and spread out in all directions. He began chanting under his breath while tapping the air repeatedly with both hands. The golden light immediately transformed into grains of golden sand that floated around him. Each grain emitted a faint crystalline glow, interwoven with traces of temporal fluctuations. The number of golden sand grains increased with astonishing speed. In just a few breaths, they formed a golden sand field over 10 zhang wide, covering more than half the chamber. Within that golden field flowed an extremely peculiar law power. Crystalline light in the air flickered on and off, flashing irregularly and creating a dizzying effect. The space enveloped by that golden field also underwent subtle changes. Whether it was the movement of air or the flow of heaven and earth spiritual energy, everything moved much faster than outside, creating a sharp contrast between the two regions. Because of the baleful aura inside his immortal apertures, Han Li's cultivation had been stuck at the peak of the gold immortal realm, unable to advance even a single step. In addition, to be safe, he had spent these years diligently cultivating the 4 Seasons Water Derivation Art and the Illusory Star Codex. Perhaps he truly possessed extraordinary talent when it came to the time law. By now, the 4 Seasons Water Derivation Art had advanced all the way to the 6th volume, while the Illusory Star Codex had also reached a very high level. He was already capable of preliminarily displaying the divine ability, known as the Illusory Star Sand Sea. With a flick of one finger, the golden light released by the pure time bottle suddenly brightened. The golden arcs revolving around it sped up sharply, seeming to resonate faintly with the illusory star sand sea below. Han Li's expression remained calm as his hands formed seals once more. A buzzing sound rang out. Golden light blazed behind him as a golden wheel emerged, spinning rapidly in place. It was the mantra treasure wheel. Dense clusters of time law patterns flickered across the wheel, far more numerous than before, packed so closely together that golden light flashed continuously as it turned. After years of refinement using time crystal grains, the number of time law patterns on the mantra treasure will had now risen to 720, reaching its limit once more. A pillar of golden radiance surged from the wheel and filled the entire chamber. 3 separate streams of golden light shone out from the mantra treasure wheel, the pure time bottle, and the illusory star sand sea, reflecting off one another as if some kind of resonance existed among them. The void trembled softly, and a faint chant like sacred music seemed to arise from the air. Hanli looked at the scene before him without showing any surprise. Back when he had obtained the 4 Seasons Water Derivation Art and the Illusory Star Codex, he had already sensed that those 2 techniques seemed faintly connected to his mantra wheel transformation scripture. After spending years cultivating the other 2 techniques, that feeling had only deepened. The 3 time-based cultivation arts were indeed linked by countless subtle threads, as though they all came from a single fundamental method. Perhaps he had not yet cultivated all 3 to completion, and so he still could not reach a final conclusion. Hanli shook his head and cast those thoughts aside. Slowly, he closed his eyes and began to chant again under his breath. At once, the 3 streams of golden light started flickering together, and under his control, they gradually intertwined. The 3 different time laws also became entangled, as if trying to merge with one another. But though the 3 golden lights appeared similar on the surface, they could never truly fuse. In fact, there was even a faint repulsion between them. Over these years, Hanli's cultivation had advanced again and again. Because of his main cultivation art and the many chances and transformations he had encountered, his understanding of the time law had also deepened little by little. As one of the 3 supreme laws, the time law was the very core and most fundamental rule of the entire true immortal realm. On the smaller scale, the passing of time governed the cycles of birth, aging, sickness, death, and the rise and fall of all things. On the greater scale, it was time itself that drove the entire true immortal realm forward in its endless course. Somewhere beyond sight, it seemed as though a hidden hand was turning the wheel of time according to some eternal principle, separating it from all other laws and pushing it onward forever. The reason it was called supreme was precisely because it stood above the vast majority of other laws. It was not bound by them. On the contrary, it could even influence or alter certain laws. Take the common laws of water and fire, for example. Under the influence of the time law, their power would be greatly diminished. Although the mantra wheel transformation scripture Hanli cultivated could use the condensed wheel of true time to control the flow of temporal force within a certain area under the driving force of vast immortal spiritual power, and though its might was unquestionably terrifying, that was still only one application of the power of time. It was not complete. In other words, the time law was vast and unfathomable. It was not something that a single mantra wheel transformation scripture could fully encompass. The 4 Seasons Water Derivation Art and the Illusory Star Codex were likewise merely different angles of understanding and applying the power of the time law. The 3,000 Great Taos were, in truth, mostly like this. To comprehend the rules of a certain law in some aspect and to manipulate and apply them with skill was already extremely rare. Ordinary true immortals had only just glimpsed the Great Tao. Even if they gained some insight, their immortal spiritual power was too limited for them to make full use of it. But gold immortals, at the very least, had already stepped through the door when it came to drawing upon the immortal spiritual power of heaven and earth. On that foundation, if one could fully integrate the various insights and applications related to a single law, there ought to be a qualitative leap. All Great Taos in the end returned to one. That was why, while cultivating the other 2 techniques over the years, Hanli had constantly tried to merge the 3 strands of temporal power. Though he had not met with success, he had never given up. As his hands continued forming seals, the 3 golden lights inside the chamber flashed wildly, weaving across one another until they gradually formed a golden vortex that rotated with a deep rumble. The 3 temporal powers also began to converge at last as the vortex turned, but they still remained clearly distinct and had yet to truly fuse. Seeing this, Hanli frowned slightly and accelerated the movement of his seals. At that very moment, the golden vortex suddenly brightened and spun even faster, while slowly beginning to shrink. The 3 temporal forces collided violently, and countless golden runes of various sizes appeared at the center of the vortex, releasing wild fluctuations of the time law. Yet the 3 strands still showed no sign of fusion, and there was even a faint tendency for them to explode. The instant Hanli saw this, he quickly stopped the activation of his seals, and the golden vortex ceased shrinking. The violent fluctuations gradually subsided and returned to their original state. Hanli let out a long breath and gave a bitter smile, shaking his head. Over the years, he had tried many methods and approaches to merge the three strands of temporal power, but every time it ended the same way. He expended immense time and effort and still achieved nothing. Could it really be that the three temporal powers could not fuse? Or was there something he still had not truly understood? Hanli stared at the golden vortex in silence. Then, a sharp light suddenly appeared in his eyes, and he waved his hand. Strands of blue light shot out. They were blue formation flags, more than 1,000 of them, flying into every corner of the chamber. Blue light flashed wildly throughout the room, forming a thick blue barrier covered in mysterious runes. It looked incomparably sturdy. At the same time, green light flickered over his body, and huge blue turtle shells emerged across his skin, joining together in an instant to form a dark green armor that covered his whole body. It was the Xuanwu bloodline. Hanli still seemed dissatisfied. Opening his mouth, he spat out several defensive immortal treasures, which transformed into multicolored shields and instantly wrapped around him. Only after doing all this did he form another seal and point toward the golden vortex. The vortex began shrinking again. Dazzling golden rays shone out from its depths as the three temporal powers clashed violently once more, once again showing signs of imminent explosion. Hanli gave a cold snort. Not only did he not stop, he accelerated his hand seals even more. The golden vortex spun violently. At its center, the golden light became so blinding that no one could look at it directly, and countless golden runes churned madly within. In the next instant, a terrifying aura spread from the center of the vortex, as though it might burst apart at any moment. Hanli narrowed his eyes and forcefully formed another series of seals. A thunderous boom rang out. The golden vortex shuddered violently and shrank by nearly half again. The cluster of golden runes inside it compressed along with it. Already like a powder keg on the verge of detonation, the runes boiled even more fiercely, looking ready to explode at any second. But right then a sudden transformation occurred. The three violently conflicting temporal powers abruptly changed. It was as though they had been compressed to their absolute limit and had finally yielded. Their violent edges softened, and they began to fuse together. The wildly churning golden runes suddenly collapsed inward, shrinking at astonishing speed before turning in a flash into a crystalline golden ring. At the same time, the outer golden vortex was drawn into it like a whale sucking in water. All the golden light filling the vast chamber disappeared at once, leaving behind only that small golden ring hovering silently in the air, giving off a faint golden glow. This scene was completely beyond Hanli's expectations. He stared at it in stunned silence, a trace of joy appearing on his face. But the golden ring was not stable. It existed for only a brief moment before beginning to tremble violently. Fine cracks appeared faintly across its surface, as though it would collapse again at any instant. An immense temporal fluctuation spread from within the ring. The moment it touched the blue barrier in the room, the barrier crumbled like paper, breaking apart inch by inch and rapidly thinning until it was on the verge of complete collapse. Hanli frowned when he saw this. Although other restrictions had been placed throughout the cave dwelling, they would probably be unable to withstand such a powerful temporal force. If this situation drew the attention of the wrong people, it would be disastrous. Just as he was about to cast a technique to suppress the temporal fluctuation, another change suddenly occurred. A mass of green light flew out from his robe and hovered in midair. It was the Heaven Palm bottle, its mouth pointed directly at the golden ring. The bottle suddenly erupted with dazzling green light, blazing like a green sun. A powerful suction force emerged from within it. With a swift sound, the golden ring was sucked inside. The moment the golden ring vanished, the terrifying temporal fluctuation disappeared as well, and the blue barrier in the chamber stopped collapsing. The Heaven Palm bottle rapidly expanded in size. Countless green runes appeared inside it, then condensed into a massive green cloud that churned restlessly. A strong law fluctuation radiated from the green cloud, causing the nearby space to ripple visibly. Hanli was slightly stunned by the sight. Then, in the center of the mantra treasure wheel, a golden vertical eye suddenly opened, and from it flew a golden crystalline thread that vanished into the Heaven Palm bottle in a flash. The green cloud inside the bottle immediately brightened and transformed into a thick green beam of light that shot forward into the void ahead. A thunderous rumble shook the chamber. Space split apart to either side, and countless crystalline lights surged out from the crack, condensing into a crystal wall. Its surface flashed wildly, with flickering scenes racing across it from time to time. A trace of disappointment appeared on Han Li's face. He had thought this new transformation of the Heaven Palm bottle might be different, but judging from the look of it, it seemed the same as before. Could it be another traversal of the soul? But at that moment, the bottle suddenly flashed with light, and two black eyes the size of beans appeared upon it, turning to look directly at Han Li with an almost human expression. At the same time, a vague voice suddenly sounded in Han Li's mind. So it has finally reached this stage. The moment Han Li heard that voice, his expression changed sharply. Before he could do anything, the crystal wall suddenly blazed with light, and a massive vortex appeared upon it, beginning to spin with a deep roar. With a thunderous boom, a vast suction force burst out from the vortex and enveloped Han Li's body. The force was incomparably greater than in all the previous traversals. Even his physical body was faintly lifted by it. But in the next instant, the force enveloping his body vanished without a trace. Han Li only felt a stab of pain in his mind. Then his soul, unable to resist in the slightest, was sucked inside. His vision went black and he lost consciousness. He had no idea how much time passed before his awareness slowly emerged from the haze. He looked around and let out a soft sound of surprise. He now found himself in a dim gray space. Beneath him stretched a dark red wasteland that extended all the way to the horizon. Not a blade of grass grew there. As far as the eye could see, there was only endless sand and stone. And above that wasteland, an immense silver crystalline river stretched across the sky, flowing with a rumbling sound like distant thunder. Looking closer, Han Li realized that what flowed inside the river was not water at all, but countless droplet-like balls of light. He slowly swept his gaze across the surroundings, surprise on his face, but did not move right away. This traversal of the soul felt different from the previous ones. Everything around him carried an aura of profound mystery. His mind immediately recalled the eyes that had appeared on the Heaven Palm bottle before the traversal, along with that vague voice. Those eyes were not unfamiliar to him. They were the spirit of the Heaven Palm bottle. And that sentence had most likely been spoken by the bottle spirit as well. What had it meant? There seemed to be both anticipation and warning in its tone. Han Li pondered for a while but could make no sense of it. He did not find the bottle spirit anywhere nearby either, so he shook his head and cast the thought aside. But as he did so, he suddenly noticed another problem. This time he did not seem to have possessed anyone. Instead, he was floating in midair as a pure soul. His mind stirred, racing through countless thoughts in an instant. Everything here should have been triggered by the golden ring. He had condensed from the 3 strands of temporal power. That thing had apparently activated a deeper transformation within the Heaven Palm bottle. After understanding this much, Han Li steadied himself and looked around again. There was nothing in the surroundings except the endless wasteland, nothing worthy of deeper examination. He quickly withdrew his gaze, moved his form, and flew toward the great river in the sky. He reached it before long. From up close he could see it even more clearly. The river flowed from the far end of the horizon ahead and disappeared into the sky at the other end, with no visible source or end. Countless droplet-like light spheres surged through it, dense beyond measure and seemingly infinite in number. Some of these light spheres were large as millstones. Others were as small as grains of rice. Regardless of size, each of them contained flickering images within, like scenes spinning across a lantern wheel. But the spheres moved too quickly for him to make them out clearly. The entire river radiated an indescribable aura of mystery, vast and boundless, carrying along the torrent formed by all those light spheres as it flowed ever onward. Han Li was shaken by the sight of the river and what it carried. It took him quite some time to recover himself before he cautiously approached again, turning his attention toward one large droplet drifting past. Within that droplet, he could vaguely make out the scene of a yellow desert. It shifted too fast to be seen clearly. After a brief hesitation, Han Li sent out a strand of spiritual sense toward it, trying to discern the image more clearly. But the instant he did, the droplet seemed to react as though stimulated. Its light flared brightly, and an enormous devouring force erupted from it. With a swift sound, Han Li's entire soul was swallowed into the droplet without the slightest resistance. His vision went black once more, and he lost consciousness again. He had no idea how long passed before his awareness slowly returned. This man's strength is truly terrifying. Even with the 5 envoys joining forces, we still lost 3 of them. A panting voice entered Han Li's awareness, carrying a clear lingering fear. This man's spirit refinement technique has reached the peak of the 5th layer. Naturally, he is no ordinary opponent. Fellow Taoist Gu and fellow Taoist Lin were greedy for merit and charged in without the slightest caution. Utterly foolish. Still, it was thanks to those 3 fools tying him down that we managed to capture his son and make him hesitate, another sharp voice said. Though that speaker also sounded somewhat drained, he was still letting out smug cold laughter. 3 of them were killed. We have suffered heavy losses on this mission. Will my lord blame us? The first voice asked with some concern. No. We inspector envoys of the heavenly court execute dangerous missions by nature. What is a few deaths? As long as we brothers deliver the heads of these 6 men to our lord, there will certainly be a rich reward. The sharp voice replied with satisfaction. Han Li was startled by their conversation and immediately restrained all fluctuations from his soul. Once he had steadied himself, he carefully sensed his surroundings. Just like the previous few times he had possessed a corpse. The corpse belonged to a middle-aged man in black robes with long disheveled hair and gaunt cheeks, wolf-like in appearance. Though the man was already dead, he still radiated a fierce and savage aura. Han Li was lying in a stretch of yellow desert. The ground around him was riddled with devastation, filled with countless craters, some of them dozens of miles across. Columns of thick smoke rose from several of those pits, carrying with them the sulfurous smell of underground magma. It was obvious that an incomparably fierce battle had taken place here not long ago. Standing nearby were 2 men in golden armor. The patterns on their armor were unmistakably the insignia of the heavenly court. One was a tall old man with sword-like brows and a prominent nose, his face cold and stern. The other was a short, fat young man with a round head and round face, completely bald without a single strand of hair on his scalp. Both looked pale. The short fat youth especially had a streak of blood at the corner of his mouth, and the golden armor on his body was partly torn. Farther away lay 3 more corpses clad in golden armor. Han Li took only a single look before immediately withdrawing his spiritual sense and sinking his soul deeper into the dead man's mind. Even from that one glance, he had sensed the auras of the tall old man and the short fat youth. Both were Tai realm beings, and their cultivation far surpassed Gong Shujiu from back then. They were at the very least in the middle stage of Tai, and perhaps even the late stage. From what he had just overheard, Han Li knew they were inspector envoys of the heavenly court. If they discovered that another soul had entered this corpse, they would certainly destroy him on the spot. His soul had traversed here because of the heaven palm bottle. What consequences would follow if he were killed here, he did not know, but he was certain they would not be good. Yet just as Han Li's soul was sinking deeper into the dead man's mind, another sudden change occurred. A vast current of heat surged out from within the black-robed man's mind and poured into Han Li's soul. It was an incomparably pure and enormous force of spiritual sense. Han Li's soul immediately swelled as if being inflated. Mixed into that immense spiritual power were fragments of memory belonging to the black-robed man, and they too rapidly merged into Han Li's mind. Perhaps because Han Li had already gone through several traversals, his soul had become accustomed to the process. Though memory fragments continuously flooded in, he did not feel much pain and absorbed them with ease. His soul readily accepted the memory fragments, but the spiritual power itself was simply too vast. Once only a little less than half of it had merged into Han Li's soul, the rest stopped. The remaining spiritual power swirled around his soul and formed a crystal-clear white cloud. It revolved rapidly according to an extraordinarily profound trajectory. Han Li was overjoyed. This spiritual power was immensely strong, far beyond his own, and the way it operated was precisely the level of the 5th layer of the spirit refinement technique. Over the years, he too had been cultivating the 5th layer of that technique. But the fifth layer was far more obscure and difficult than he had ever expected. Even after hundreds of years of hard cultivation, he had made little progress. Yet now, just by sensing the circulation of this spiritual power, countless difficult points in his past cultivation suddenly became clear to him. It was as if enlightenment had struck him all at once. But this was not the time to study it carefully. Han Li abruptly opened his eyes and slashed his hand outward. A dazzling streak of black light burst from his palm. It was a pitch-black flying sword. The black radiance of the sword suddenly intensified, and it vanished in a blur. Then countless black sword lights silently appeared out of nowhere, condensing into a vast mountain of swords that came crashing down toward the tall old man and the short fat youth. The upheaval in the black-robed man's mind was too great to possibly escape the notice of those two standing nearby. Sure enough, both the tall old man and the short fat youth were staring toward the corpse on the ground in utter shock and immediately shot backward. But neither of them noticed that a wisp of crystalline light had shot out from Han Li's glabella and vanished into empty space in a flash. "You are not dead? Impossible!" the tall old man roared in disbelief, thrusting one hand downward toward Han Li. Countless blue ripples surged from his palm and instantly condensed into the phantom image of a giant blue flood dragon, which lunged savagely toward the black mountain of swords. The flood dragon coiled its enormous body around the sword mountain, trapping it completely. A terrifying icy force erupted from the dragon phantom. Layers of ice crystals spread through the surrounding void, freezing the whole area in an instant. Blue light flashed across the black sword mountain as it too abruptly stopped in place, frozen solid and covered with a thick layer of blue ice. A trace of fear flickered in the eyes of the short fat youth, but he still shouted and flung out his arm. A clear cry rang out as two streaks of crimson light shot from his sleeve. They were two crimson hooked blades. Each blade was 3 feet long, wreathed in blazing red flames that faintly gathered into flower-like shapes, giving off a terrifying heat. The twin hooked blades trembled and turned into 2 crimson arcs that curved through the air and slashed toward Han Li. Han Li slapped the ground with his hand. His body shot up like a sheet of paper, then twisted in a bizarre motion and turned into a black shadow, slipping through the narrow gap between the 2 crimson arcs. "Bind," he said with a faint smile on his lips, his hands rapidly forming seals. A flash of light flickered in the void behind the tall old man, and several crystalline chains shot out from nowhere and pierced into his head. Terror appeared on the old man's face. He raised both hands about to do something, but in the very next instant, all expression vanished from his eyes, leaving only emptiness. His retreating body also froze in place, standing there motionless like a statue. The distance between them was simply too short, and Han Li's attack had come too suddenly. The tall old man, a Grand Tai cultivator, had not even had the chance to display his true power before being imprisoned by the cage of divine sense.